So I'm generally not a fan of censorship, especially when it comes to video games. Most recently, we have been seeing like payment processors essentially enacting their own will upon platforms like Steam, where, they decided that they wouldn't allow their payment processors to be utilized in that platform if Steam didn't remove certain games, so on and so forth. But the censorship we're seeing in this particular scenario is kind of just sad and a bit embarrassing in the reason that it's happening. Let's first read this statement from the developers of this game called Stella Sora. Stella Sora, for those who don't know, is this top-down action game that features waifus and whatnot. It's, one of those mobile titles with, I think it has gacha elements and whatnot. And recently, the developers of this game had to issue the following apology, quote, and this is a translation from Korean to English, so it might not be the perfect translation, but it relays the point across. Hello, Demon King. We have reviewed your opinions regarding the specific motion of the upcoming character that is currently raising issues. When they say motion here, they're referring to like a scene or animation in the game. First, we sincerely apologize for any discomfort this scene has caused many of you Demon Kings. However, we would like to inform you that this motion, contrary to your concerns, is a scene created by an artist of foreign nationality and has absolutely no relation to any specific ideology. Stella Sora does not support any ideology in any way, nor does it attempt to project any specific ideology through the game. We're striving to ensure that the game remains a game that many users can enjoy. In addition, we're internally discussing this matter with the development team and reviewing follow-up response plans, including the possibility of revisions. We'll provide further details on specific response measures through a separate announcement at a later date. Reading this apology, you would think that something obscene made it into the game, something just so taboo that people felt the need to speak out, and the developers had to come out and just really clarify that they do not support this, separating themselves from the artist by saying that they were a foreign nationality, so they didn't know the ways, and so on and so forth. You would think something truly awful made it into the game. So let's take a look at the scene in question. It's this right here. So let me ask you, just as someone who may not be familiar with the situation, do you see anything wrong with this picture and this little bit of animation? At a glance, I would not understand what's wrong with this, because there is, in fact, nothing wrong with this, but certain subsects of the Korean male population would not agree with that assessment. Apparently, what became controversial is this right here. This part of the animation showing this hand position. So why has that garnered so much controversy? Well, a little history lesson for you all. Back in 2015, there was this feminist movement that started in Korea called Megalia, and their logo was basically this. And that's a logo that's basically trying to say, like, you have a small wee-wee, right? The thing about this particular feminist movement is that it is considered to be very radical and extreme. Many deem them to have gone too far with their methods, being very unproductive and just very divisive with their tactics. Many would argue that they're more infamous than famous, and by 2017, 2018, this movement had gone defunct. Now, something that came out of this Megali movement is this thing called finger-pinching conspiracy theory, which originated in South Korea, and it claims that there's a deliberate plot to spread and promote misandry through symbolic hand gestures, and that radical feminist groups have propagated these hidden messages to humiliate men with small wee-wees. They believe that certain groups have infiltrated certain companies, certain media, certain games to hide the message of trying to insult men with this hand gesture. That's what this conspiracy is about. Stellar Blade being a game that's popular in Korea, being made by Korean developers, when some Korean folks saw this hand gesture right here, among the group of folks who believe in this finger-pinching conspiracy theory, there was a ton of backlash. And that's the reason that Stella Sora had to come out with this statement, apologizing, almost acting as if the gravest sin has been committed, talking about how they don't support certain ideologies. Like, this is the kind of apology you would see if an artist put in like a swastika in your game. Like, it's insane the level of apology they had to issue for this. Basically, an animation that happened to have in this specific moment the hand and fingers placed in a specific way where it resembles that hand signal, but isn't really that, because even when I'm resting my hands, my fingers do that. You know what I mean? So this is just This is just something that happens when, you're going about your day to day. And in this scenario, it's just a character who's a little startled and they happen to have their hands in a very specific way that can happen when you have this kind of reaction. Like, there was no deliberate effort for them to put this hand motion in as a way to tell men, hey, you have a small wee-wee. Not a single reasonable person would look at this and go, oh my gosh, do you see that insult to men that they featured in the game? This wouldn't register in anyone else's mind. It didn't until they called it out as something that it wasn't. And the thing is, this is not the first time we've seen something like this happen. There's this other game going by the title Goddess of Victory, Nikke, which was developed by a development studio called Shift Up, a Korean development studio who also created Stellar Blade. This game is like a third-person shooter RPG with, waifu gacha elements as well. And recently they released this promotional artwork right here. And looking at it, like, you might think to yourself, what's wrong with this one? I don't even see the finger pinching hand gesture. But what people saw was this right here. The finger pinching conspiracy theorists, they saw this hand motion right here, this hand position, and got mad about this because they believe that this right here is yet another example of the finger pinching hand gesture being snuck in a game to try to insult men. Shortly after, the development studio Shift Up actually capitulated and updated the artwork so that the hand gesture isn't remotely close to a finger pinching motion. And then beyond that, even issued an apology statement. And here's the statement that they released to apologize to the folks who got pissed off at this. And this is also a translation from Korean to English, so it might not be a perfect translation, but you get the message here. Quote, "Hello, I'm Nikke, the Goddess of Victory. First, regarding some of the resources released on Wednesday, July 30th, I sincerely apologize to the commander for any inconvenience and misunderstanding. Currently, the resources available after the initial report is received. We're working on immediate verification and correction. There was some delay in resource replacement and guidance during the detailed review process. This resource was created by overseas outsourcing company we're collaborating with. There was no hateful expression or intention during the production process. I ask for your generous understanding." It's the exact same excuse that was used by the development team of Stella Sora. This artist was from a foreign nation. They didn't know what they were doing. And not only is it clear with this artwork that there was no intent to intentionally include the finger pinching motion, this hand pose doesn't even resemble the finger pinching motion. I don't know how you can look at this and say, they're implying that men have small wee-wees. Like, how insecure do you have to be to reach that far to see the finger pinching motion in this? And then back in 2024, MapleStory faced a similar controversy because of this artwork right here of this girl who has this kind of praying hand motion. But if you zoom in, you can see that there's this thing that kind of looks like a finger pinching motion. So they had to change it to something that didn't quite resemble that and apologize and whatnot. But that's actually what it looks like. They weren't intentionally trying to hide some secret message to insult men. That's just what that hand motion looks like if you do it in real life. And this is the first time I'm learning about any of this. I had no idea this was a thing, but yeah, it is apparently a thing. And scrolling down this Wikipedia page, you'll find tons of instances where companies had to issue statements or respond to backlash of people believing that, there's a conspiracy to ensure that the finger pinching motion makes it in media so that, men can be defamed and men with small wee-wees are humiliated or something. It's insane. And there's a long history of this going all the way back to 2021. Like, this marketing material from Apple made headlines in Korea because people saw this, pinching hand gesture that was used to emphasize the thinness of the phone as a conspiracy to try to insult men and their genitals. And anywhere anything resembling that hand gesture appears, people have gone out of their way to criticize and to ensure that there is this huge backlash against that company. And a lot of companies have capitulated either by apologizing in a statement or by editing their hand gestures so it less resembles the finger pinching motion. Like, throughout the history of gaming, I've seen a lot of censorship cases. But this right here has to be the most non-issue of a reason to censor a game I've ever seen. And, it's not like the biggest deal in the world. It's just changing a hand gesture, I guess. But the fact that this is an issue at all is insane to me. Like, this position of the hand and the fingers is used for so many things beyond just an insult. And I mean, this situation has gone viral with people retweeting, people reporting on this and saying things like Korean men are genuinely mentally ill on a scale seen nowhere else on earth. Here's another Twitter user retweeting this and saying Korean men are such massive pussies, bro. Oh my God, LMAO. And yeah, garnering millions of views and hundreds of thousands of likes. Even games industry veterans and researchers like Daniel Ahmad chimed in saying, here's a wiki article on how insane this conspiracy theory is. So many Korean games have had to apologize to men because they think it's a real thing. As a man of Korean origin and ethnicity, I want to very clearly emphasize that these men do not represent Koreans. Like, these individuals give Korea a bad rap. They do not speak for all of us. No matter who you are, if you want to use this hand gesture or anything resembling it in any way, shape, or form, please, by all means, do it. I don't give a shit. And neither should the rest of the world and this specific sector of Korean men. And that goes doubly true when it's very clear that there was no intentional intent to, like, make this hand gesture an insult to anyone. It just happens to be that the hand and the fingers happen to be that way for this specific animation. Same with this artwork right here from Goddess of Victory Nikke. It just happened to be that the hand happened to be in this position because it makes sense for it to be like that in this position. And this one doesn't even resemble the pinching motion at all. And with situations like this Apple one, clearly the intent was to emphasize something different other than your wee-wee. It was intended to emphasize the thinness of this product. And we've got other situations like these ones where, you know, you do the pinching motion to grab things sometimes, you know, and that's what's emphasized here. It has nothing to do with your family jewels. Anyway, I don't know. This caught my attention because I had no idea this whole conspiracy was a thing. And I didn't know that video games garnered a level of backlash from that conspiracy theory to the point where they have to issue apologies and actually change things that don't need to be changed. And the changes themselves don't impact the game in any tremendous way. But the fact that any of this has to happen at all, I think is just nefarious. So yeah, I don't know. This is something that has made the rounds in the gaming realm on the internet. So it's just something that I wanted to highlight and just express my opinions about. That's everything you need to know about this whole situation. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this in the comments below. This is One Man's Take. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.